Hello, hello. If you hear the distant sounds of a choo-choo, which you probably should not be able to hear, but it might be there, then it's a choo-choo. Congratulations. Choo-choo is an Americanism for a train, in case, you're like a human. Sorry, welcome back to Spooktober, or whatever the hell Plaguetober, sorry. Where I'm drawing people's submissions for local urban legends that I'm going to turn into monster ladies, because why not? In this case, it actually started as a monster lady. Funny enough. Alright, this one comes from Dixidian, who's just... how do I pronounce this? Blodeuwedd? I don't know. It's something like that. Blodeuwedd, or something of that nature, from Welsh myth. Says it is a woman made from flowers, to be a wife for a man cursed to take no human wife. It actually ended up not quite being that exactly, and here I'm going through my draft stage. This is the one that I end up sticking with, for the most part. If I had it to do over, I would probably be a little bit more aggressive with my perspective, which I was trying to do here, but because this is a 5-hour drawing as opposed to like a 9-hour or anything like that, I was actually trying to do this as quickly as possible because I was worried about not getting enough of these done during October. So as a result, I was trying to make this as expedient as possible. I had a plan to rely mainly on like line thickness and not do so much coloring this time around. But in a true to me fashion, I ended up just doing it anyways. So I kind of got not the worst of both worlds, but it could have been slightly better, I guess. But anyway, getting ahead of ourselves. Alright, so the Blodeuwedd, or whatever it is exactly, is sort of like that, yes. In my own little research, I discovered that the character of Lulog or Geifs, I'm going to mispronounce so many of these names. This is a nightmare. Was placed under a tinge by his mother. A tinge, or I think it's actually related to an Irish, it starts with a G, I can't remember. But it's sort of like a curse, and a lot of my resources here described it as being a curse. It's not actually a curse. It's like a curse that also acts as a deal, and that you might gain power of some sort. Here I was playing with the idea of giving her a hat, but I was actually originally playing with the idea of, like, what should I do with her clothing, and I was thinking, well, maybe I should do some local, like, modern Wales sort of a look, so I started looking at pictures of what modern fashion is like in Wales, and eventually I decided, no, I'm just going to make her sort of more of a wild animal. So to that end, I decided to make sort of her clothing also be her, like, feathers and whatnot. So, but a tinge is sort of like a deal that I guess you don't really make with anyone. It's just something that is. And it's a curse that makes it so that you can't do one thing, but you also get something else. And the story doesn't really make it clear what exactly he gained as a result of this. But from what I'm gathering, it was that he was effectively nearly immortal, or he had like great success in life and he was nearly unkillable. And that's just by context. I'm not sure if that's actually true or not, but from what I can gather, that seems to be the most plausible explanation. So the deal seems to have been he cannot die, but he cannot take a human wife, and as a result, he cannot, like, sire progeny or anything of that nature, I would assume would be the logic of it. In other words, he will have great success in life, but he will leave nothing behind in terms of his, like, biology or what have you. So his uncle, and I had to gather this from a bunch of different sources, but it seems that his uncle was a magician, it just so happened. And his uncle, the magician, Gwydion, I think there was also another magician that was involved in this for some reason, God knows what reason, called Math, like literally just math. They concoct this idea to create the world's first real doll. And I'm being totally serious. They decide we're going to use flowers from an oak tree, flowers of the broom, which is it's sort of like a little yellow flower, I guess, and flowers of the meadowsweet, which is it's like this puffy white sort of flower that grows in not kind of swampy areas, but especially damp fields, I guess would be the best way to describe it. I think we have something similar here, if not the exact same thing. Because we mow the shit out of them whenever we used to bale years and years ago. Anyways, they deck those three varieties of flowers, and I learned this later, otherwise I probably would have incorporated them more, to conjure up the most beautiful maiden anyone had ever seen. So they make this really beautiful lady out of these flowers. The world's first real doll. What an accomplishment, right? So they baptize her because gotta make sure the Lord knows that the real doll that you're fucking is is propitiated by the blood of Christ, I guess. I don't know what the hell's going on there. But, just make sure that, everything's on the up and up. So, for some reason, and I could not figure out why, I found I guess that's not really the point, but for some reason, the lady that they made starts committing adultery with a local asshole named Gronwer Pebber. I don't know, dude. These names. But he was a local lord that owned another patch of land, I guess, and he wanted this other guy's land. Because again, he had great success in life. I'm guessing this is part of the whole deal. And the fact that they were close by, I guess they were competitors, and he just wanted his land out of it. I guess that's where it's coming from. I have no idea. So for whatever reason, this perfect wife that they made for him, that is apparently specifically designed for him, decides, fuck him. I'm gonna fuck this other dude who's he's got big muscles because he's a hunter, and probably his dick is also huge. I guess you could also, this story is the tale of Blodeuwedd or whatever. It could probably also just be titled something like The Tale of the Unappreciative Bitch, or The Tale of the Dumbass Whore, something of that nature. Because that seems to be the crux of the story. I don't know what moral lesson you're really supposed to glean from this, really. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but it's one of those old-fashioned stories where once you're done, you're like, well, what was the point of that? Why did someone make up this story? Did they just get cheated on at some point? And they're like, damn, fuck women. And that was their crux of it? Maybe, I don't know. But anyways, she starts committing adultery with this local asshole because he's a big, strong hunter and he has big muscles. So I guess she's just like, I like him now. He's the best. He's pretty. He's got big muscles. Bet he can fuck me real good. And I have no idea. If she ever had a reason, I don't know what it is. It's never stated. And considering how old of a story this is, probably no one ever considered why she would do that. I guess the logic was just, don't commit adultery, wives, and then all the women were supposed to nod their heads in agreement or something. I have no idea. But they start conspiring to kill this guy. I guess because he wants his land, is my assumption. And the lady that they made knows the conditions to kill this other guy. And this is where I assume the whole the curse element or whatever, the tinge comes into play. Because the conditions are absolutely absurd. He cannot be killed during day or night. He cannot be killed indoors or outdoors. He can be killed neither while riding or walking, nor while clothed nor naked, nor by any weapon that has been lawfully made. So it's sort of like a riddle in a ways, but it ends up being that he can only be killed at dusk, neither day nor night, while wrapped in a net, which is kind of stupid. That's supposed to be in. You can't kill him indoors or outdoors, so wear a net over your body outdoors, and that counts, which is ridiculous, but whatever. That would seem to just be, well, now you're both, so you're like double fucked, but whatever. I guess that works. And you have to have 1 foot on a bath that's described sometimes, but in another text I saw that it was described as being a cauldron, which I guess is the same thing in some ways, with the other foot being on a black goat, or sometimes it's just described as being a goat or a sheep or something of that nature, by a riverbank with a spear that has been forged for a year during the hours when everyone is at mass. Oh boy. That triggers something inside me, and I'm not sure what it is. Just the absurd conditions required from that just for some reason give me this weird form of anxiety that I don't understand. Okay, but that's what you need to do. And at first I thought this meant he could not be killed unless he was doing all these things. It's like, well, how are you going to trick him into doing that? And then it turns out, no, the murderer has to be the one that does all this stuff. Which made me think, oh, I get it now. Like, it's still insane, because old, like, medieval stories, so it's naturally going to be batshit crazy. But at least it's not as insane, perhaps? And by the way, if you haven't noticed, my voice has gotten better since last time. Somewhat. Still get a little bit dry mouth. I probably should have waited the last time during my last video for the recording to be done, because I feel like I really missed out on a lot of stuff, and that was really unfortunate. But what is done, I guess. I really feel like I needed to get that out as quickly as possible, and just, I was not in a good state. And since then, actually, we've had trouble with our, like, well system here, which necessitated, like, digging up we don't use, like, pipe water from the city or anything, obviously. Here we have to use wells, so if something goes wrong, it really goes wrong. We have to dig up the whole thing, so now I'm having to bathe in, like, dirty dirt water for a while, because I'm a dirty dirt boy. That's how it is. Alright, so, continuing with this amazing story. He does all this, he gets this information out of him, or her, and then a year later, after all this has been prepared, he stands his foot on the goat and on the cauldron while he's, like, bouncing with a net over his head and all this other nonsense. And he throws the spear while he's on the riverside, I'm guessing. And it clips him. It doesn't actually kill him, but it does severely injure him. And as a result, Lou, I think that's how you pronounce his name, but the hero, in other words, turns into an eagle, which apparently he can do, which had not been established anywhere in these stories up until then, but he just does that. He turns into an eagle and flies away. And his uncle, at some point afterwards, gets wind of all this that has been going on. And I'm guessing he's been injured a while. It's not really specified in any of the text. But supposedly the asshole, the big, strong, big dick hunter that stole his woman, has since, like, claimed his land as his own as a result of this, because he's assumed he's dead. I'm guessing. It's not specified, but his uncle gets wind of this, the magician, and then goes down there and finds him as the eagle, like the injured eagle. Manages to, like, summon him down and then return him into being, like, human, and then nurses him back to health. And so after this, they decide, fuck this guy, and fuck her too. So, let's see, let me get this straight, actually, because this gets really ridiculous. Yeah, they track him down. Yeah, I guess it's not really specified too much what exactly they do. the hunter, yeah, the hunter gets wind of what happened as far as him being recovered. And there's not really a big showdown or anything at the end. I guess the involvement of the uncle, who is also like a deadly, deadly magician, might just like tip off some, it might set off some warning bells, I guess. I guess that's the logic. And so he sends out emissaries to Lou to say, sorry, I tried to murder you. There could be no bigger of a, like, dickbag thing to do. Of someone tries to murder you, fails, and then because they got caught, and for no other reason, like, this is a premeditated attempt at murder that went on for, what, over a year? And he's going to apologize for it? Are you insane? But you get the idea. He begs for forgiveness, and Lou, of course, refuses, because why would anyone ever be like, oh, okay, alright, it must have been a mistake. But he throws himself on Lou's mercy, and he says no, but then he sort of talks him into it. And so Lou says, alright, you know what? Gron, whatever your hell your name is, you go stand at the exact position that I was standing, on that same riverbank. And you will receive a blow from your own spear. And if you survive, then you are forgiven. And of course he says, well, I don't do that. I don't want to be saved by my own spear. I don't want that. I'm scared. Because he's a big, strong hunter. He's got a big penis, right? So obviously he's terrified of actually getting the same thing that he tried to give to someone else. So eventually they come to this understanding of, okay, I will stand there and take the blow from the spear, but I get to hold a big rock in between myself and you chucking this thing. And like, if I survive it, you know, everything's still cool, right? And he's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll do that. I'll let you try to shield yourself with a stone. And, so they set all this up, and Lou is so fucking pissed that he chucks the spear so hard that it just blows through the whole rock and leaves that big hole, which apparently is still, it's still around, apparently. It's called, Lycron, which is like Gron stone. Considering its name is like, apparently Ron. There must be a silent G, so it's not Gron. It's like this Run. I don't know. Languages are so weird, aren't they, guys? But that stone is still around. It's just a big stone with a hole in it. And, of course, it just blows through the rock and kills the guy. And so the flower lady that was made out of flowers for this guy has been there the whole time. And, well, me, I love you. I didn't mean it. You know, just playing that card. And he says, nah, bitch. And they turn her into an owl. And that's the reason why she's an owl. Because supposedly, for some reason, they think that all other birds hate owls. So this seems to be the theme of the story, is people can just turn into birds for some reason. I guess that was the thing at the time. And, since he got to turn into an eagle, she has to turn into an owl, because everyone should hate her for the rest of time. And as a result, the word that they use to this day, this Welsh word, is her name, which is whatever, Blodeuwedd, or whatever thing that I can't pronounce is. And that's the story. That's the whole thing. There's not really any lesson to be learned from it. It's just one time some lady had a kid and cursed him so that he would be super cool, but he can never have a wife. And everyone thought, well, that's shitty. He didn't ask for that. So they make him a wife, presumably that has like perfect traits that would make it... Like, you would think in the making of this lady then they would say, all right, also, she really, really likes him and only him. And he also, like, she's so perfect for him specifically that he's just madly in love with her and he just treats her right and just, like, it's sort of a weird, shitty situation that you're making a human being to bed, right? But still, if at least there's, like, some semblance of something, like, sort of okay going on in the sense of, well, okay, we'll make them this way, but they will be absolutely perfect for one another in every way. Still fucked up, but, it's worth considering and worth talking about. Like, something, right? But maybe that's a modern sensibility. If you can call it a sensibility at all. By the way, I based her appearance here off the tawny owl. I looked up owls that are common within Great Britain and Wales specifically. And there were several, but some of them were not quite owl-like. Like, visually, they weren't, that distinct. The barn owl was there. Of course, I didn't want it to have, like, a completely expressionless face or anything like that. So that's the reason why I went with the tawny owl, which are still cuties. And by the way, the owl is probably one of my favorite types of animals, so that's probably one of the reasons why I was drawn to this in the first place. I really like owls, always have. In college, there was a project where they were saying, pick an animal that most exemplifies who you are. And at first I thought cat, maybe, because I'm very cat-like, and I've talked about that before in a previous video, the Wampus video, actually. And I thought, well, no, that's too generic. Like, everyone's got to be picking dog or cat or whatever the hell they had lying around the house at the time. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to go with something a little bit that's very similar. And I decided to go with the owl, because owls are a lot like sky kittens, in a sense. One of the fun things about owls is that they're actually dumb as bricks. Like, they're a symbol of wisdom, but they're very stupid. Like, they're actually very, very dumb. But they're very cute looking. Unless you get their feathers off, then they get kind of freaky looking. But they are little cutie pies. They can be kind of smart from time to time, but not often. And more importantly, they have adorable behaviors. And they look cute. And that's what really matters most of all. So what the moral of the story is, I don't know. Those are the things that I wonder about with this story is, why did she do that? Like, what's really supposed to be what's going on here? Well, is it that she was designed for him, and as a result, she resented him for it? That would make sense. Like, imagine if you were made for, like, someone to, like, even if you were also made to be perfect for them, and they were perfect for you, and just everything was, you immediately felt a connection with them. Still, the fact that you knew that you were designed for them, and you just exist to be their partner, their sexual plaything, or their helper, or whatever, that could create resentment where there otherwise should not be any, right? So that would make some sense. So even if you did feel a connection with them and were in love with them or whatever, then you might still resist it because of the fact that you knew that you never had a choice in your own nature. Like, that could be an interesting take on things, I guess. But, it's an old story, so we really don't get that either way. And here also, with her hair, if I had way more time, like, I was trying to hurry this along and do this as quickly as possible. Here I'm even doing, like, a multiply shading layer, which I never really do these days anymore. But it's just much, much faster. Doing it with this hard brown so I can see what the hell it is that I'm doing, first of all. But whenever I was doing her hair, I knew I was going to try to do a thing where, well, I wanted to look like an owl, but I also wanted to make it clear that she was born from, like, plants and flowers. So I want to carry that over with her. So I went and looked up local, like, flower sellers within Wales online and started looking at their inventory. And I started looking at what is most popular there. because I thought, well, I could just do whatever I want to. Actually, my first instinct was I will go see what's the national flower of Wales or whatever, and apparently it's the daffodil, if I remember correctly. And I thought, well, I'm not going to have a bunch of daffodils in her hair. This is really one-sided, and I need more flowers than that. So that's where the idea of looking up floral arrangements came from. And looking those up, I sorted by whatever was the most popular, and a lot of that was really deep greens, almost sort of bluish greens with a lot of purples and magentas and things of that nature. So that's what I decided to go with, which suited me just fine because those are typically the colors I use anyways. Haha, funny thing about that. So that's where I got the idea for that. Trying to... The whole idea of Blodeuwedd, or whatever, has come up a few times in popular culture, but it's not particularly well known for what I can tell. Apparently there was a writer that tried to explore, like what I was talking about. He tried to... Actually, it might have been a woman. Let's see. Hold on real fast. Yeah, Louise. Okay. It's not Lewis, it's Louise. Louise M. Hewitt explores the story of the Blodeuwedd and math son of Mathonwy from a feminist perspective in the second and third books, Wind from 2017 and Flowers, also published in 2017, of her novel series Pictish Spirit within the novels. A discussion about the three significant females in the story of math son and Mathonwy, Gawain, Oriand, Horde, and Blodeuwedd. Holy shit, what a title. So that would be interesting to look up and see what was going on there. Obviously, with these old stories, there's never really that much going on in terms of... And here I'm doing the same thing. In my previous video, I decided, I'm going to go with the sort of more very loose coloring where everything is less saturated. Which is a little bit more difficult whenever you're trying to draw something that looks like it's happening at night. But, I tried to get around that later. So it'd be interesting to look that up. There's lots of old stories like that there's just not much to them. And whenever you read them, they sound either psychotic or like they're missing some really key component that isn't being explained. And I always really enjoyed, reading things about... Oh, it turns out there was, historical context, because at the time, this other nation had invaded this nation, and the character of so-and-so was actually, a metaphor for this other well-known king at the time. And it's sort of like reading about how, supposedly, 666 in the Bible, which actually I think in the original is supposed to be 667. There's a whole thing about that, too. But supposedly... Some historians believe it was actually a political illusion being made at the time about the concurrent Roman emperor, because the numerical play that he was using at the time also does correspond exactly with what his name happened to be. Was it Nero? I can't remember. But anyways, you get the idea. Lots of stories like that always have some sort of weird sort of backstory or inspiration that never really gets touched upon. And it's another one of those cases of, here we have the final version, it's another one of those cases of there are many things within history that get lost over time. Even if they're not lost completely, sometimes their context gets changed. In my Let's Gripe About Villains thing, I sort of go into this at the very beginning when I'm talking about the nature of how even whenever we're gone, a lot of the times people don't know who we actually really even were. So famous historical figures will often get portrayed as being someone that they never were. People that are considered to be heroes were actually monsters in their real life, and they just were a cult of personality because their personalities, as harmful as they were, lent themselves to being used by a greater population. There's all sorts of things like that that are just really fascinating to me. Just the idea that history and what things mean to us are mainly constructs that we create for ourselves in our own heads. And even if there's historical context and everything to them, a lot of times it gets taken out of context and even weaponized and used by other people in ways that they never intended or never anticipated, and they become entirely new organisms as a result. That's probably where the whole concept of like mimetic information memes, modern memes, come from, is that idea, that way that people organize information and allow it to propagate and change culturally. So in that way, I guess maybe the point is not so much what we lost as what we can utilize from what we know of ancient stories like this. Because a story like this does have a lot of weird modern context that you can give it if you really wanted to give it to that story. Whereas before, I imagine it was a very simple and matter-of-fact story that was just meant to explain a cute stone that someone saw one time that had a hole in it. And that was it. That was probably the whole point of the story. But here we are today, and it has weird cultural overtones that no one ever would have anticipated. But anyways, continue leaving your suggestions in the comments below. Still have a huge backlog. I'm not wanting for any more of them, but if you so happen to think of more, then feel free to give more, and I shall go through them. No promises. But I will see you guys next time. I'll try to get I'll try for 2 more of these, but if things keep exploding around the house, then it might get a little bit more difficult. It might get more difficult if things keep exploding. Alright, see you guys next time.